Hello and welcome back to the Elite Football Show. My name is Haider Rubani and I'm your host as ever today. We're doing another player analysis show. We actually had this recorded, but my brother, the editor, as you all know, forgot to download it from StreamYard about 2 weeks ago and it expired. So we're back again. Jeremy is back, one of my favorite guests, and we're going to talk about Bissouma. And actually, it's quite a good time to talk about him, Jeremy, because you bought Caicedo, someone I really wanted, and obviously you've seen the video that I put out, and he's an exciting talent. And then you've got Spurs losing to Brighton, and Bissouma had a good performance. So there's a lot more to talk about today. But Jeremy, welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. Tell me your view on the signing of Caicedo and how that affects Bissouma.
I'll be completely honest. I didn't know a lot about Caicedo apart from just hearing that he's one of the sort of big young talents of South America. And I actually watched your video on him from when it looked like United were going to sign him, and with Simon Edwards, and really excited looking at that. He sounds like a real talent. And Brighton have got, the last few years, they've been signing a lot of development players or young players who've gone straight into the development team or gone out on loan. And although we've got more players breaking through into the first team squad under Potter than we had under Houghton, and probably a lot more than a lot of other Premier League teams, there's still not, considering how many we've signed the last few years, there's still not that many coming through. But Caicedo definitely looks like one who's likely to. I mean, obviously, you look at the pedigree and the fact that he's already a full international, he's already played Libertadores, that kind of thing. And I think there were rumours that he'd be sort of loaned straight out, but the fact that he's been given a shirt number suggests that we might even see him before the end of this season. There's talk that he's sort of, he hasn't played for 6 weeks, so he's effectively almost starting his pre-season now. So I think it's going to be a while, and certainly looking at how we sort of gradually brought McAllister in last year, for example, I don't think we're going to see him for a good 2-3 months, but yeah, it sounds really promising that we'll see a bit of him this season, and it's hard not to sort of put 2 and 2 together and think he's a replacement for Bissouma.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that. I mean, when I look at Caicedo, the fact he cost 5 million, that's why I was quite frustrated with Manchester United. Now, a lot of people say to me, you've never seen him play. Well, I've spent time watching him play after we were linked with him. Simon Edwards is very well respected. I mean, you've watched the video. Gives a really, really big really good breakdown, doesn't he? Very in-depth about what sort of player he is. I mean, he can play anywhere in the midfield, really. You can put him deep and he can still play out, pick up the ball from the centre-backs and progress the ball forward. He plays number 8, which is probably where he's more comfortable. I mean, what more can you want? And at that price? And as Simon said, he would cost maybe 30 million, I would say, if he was Brazilian or Argentinian, even Colombian maybe. So moving on to Bissouma, I mean, look, it's frustrating, but I think the signs are that Bissouma will most likely go in the summer, depending on the finances of other teams. But let's talk about his positioning as well, because a lot of Manchester United fans and Liverpool fans, actually, because he's been linked with Liverpool, have been saying, oh, he can play as a number 6. He can play in the deepest role. He can sit and he can hold. I'm not convinced, Jeremy, that is his most natural position. Every time I've seen him play, he's a number 8. He likes to play box to box. He likes to provide energy. He likes to, go up as well, but he can also come back and defend. I'm not convinced if Manchester United sign him, he's the player to sit deep, let's say next to a Pogba, and allow Pogba to go forward while he has to be disciplined.
I mean, I don't mind him in a sort of midfield too, as being the player who sits a little bit more, but I certainly wouldn't say he's a sort of out-and-out number 6 who's going to, maybe in a midfield 3, be the deep one who just does nothing more than provide a shield for the defence. I mean, he is a very good tackler. He does break up play well. Depending on how Brighton play and who Brighton play, he often is the sort of deeper lying midfielder, but certainly it's sort of too reductive to say that makes him a defensive midfielder. As you said, for me, he's a number 8. He's box to box. He can do the defensive side and tackle well, but he's really good bringing the ball out at his feet. He's got a really good range of passing, and I just think it would be a waste of his talent. Firstly, it would be a waste of his talent to make him just sit. And secondly, although that's one of the many things he can do, I don't think it's his strongest skill, and arguably, I'm sure it's something he can learn, but arguably he's not necessarily disciplined enough to sit. But that's more because he hasn't needed to up till now. If someone brings him in and says, this is going to be your role, then he'll learn it. And I'm sure he'll do it very well because he generally does everything well.
Let's talk about those strengths and weaknesses again. So strengths-wise, I mean, he was fantastic against Spurs. And that's why I think Premier League clubs would be crazy not to be looking within the league. There's a lot of good players in Europe, but he's Premier League proven. He bosses the midfield against Ndombele, who's a good midfielder. He's comfortable in possession. A lot of these top 6 sides dominate possession. He plays for a side, the Brighton side, who are very cultured. Potter's got you guys very well drilled. You play beautiful football. You deserve more points. You're not doing well on the expected points, and we know that. Man United won a game against you when the whistle went. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened before. And I know that you're quite upset about that, and I tease you sometimes about it. But all these sort of things, I mean, like you said, he's intelligent. He can carry the ball dynamically. I mean, he's almost, dare I say it, got all the attributes to be a very, very complete midfielder. I don't want to say the best because we don't know what's going to happen, but surely up there in the Premier League. And what are the weaknesses though as well? What are the areas of his game where it might put off a big side going and spending 40 million on him?
I think that the main weakness until now has just been sort of concentration and consistency. I can't remember if it was Potter or someone talking about Bissouma the other day. He kind of said, at his best, he's a Champions League player. He's just not a Champions League player every week. And I think that's probably a good way to describe it. I mean, when he first came to Brighton, right from the start, there were flashes of brilliance, but then there were also, partly because of injury niggles, and he was sort of in and out of the team, but just it wasn't, we weren't seeing the best of him every single week. But I think it's just a learning curve for him. I mean, he did play quite a few games for Lille in Ligue 1 and helped a struggling team to survive. He sort of came in under Bielsa, and his development was disrupted a little bit there by the fact that Bielsa, the great genius, apparently wanted to convert him into a fullback. But he showed already at Lille that he's got all the raw talent, and it was just a case of harnessing it. And maybe it's taken a little bit longer than people were expecting, but he's, I think, 24 now, so sort of just coming to the peak. And certainly since the end of lockdown, or the first lockdown, and the sort of restart of last season, he's been immense practically every match. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Spurs match, and also the other day, one of the Brighton sort of fan sites kind of put up their candidates for January Player of the Month. And it's been a reasonable month for us, but he wasn't even amongst the candidates. And I think both those things, the fact that he wasn't there and the fact that everyone was raving more about Gross and McAllister after the Spurs match, is almost because it's become the norm for Bissouma to be pretty much excellent every match. I mean, you look at him, whether it's against Newport or against Spurs, it's the same match. He looks unfazed. He's the player who's always finding space. Again, Gross and McAllister might get the credit for the sort of more showbiz final passes or assists or whatever, but it's Bissouma who's always finding that first, either winning the ball or finding those little pockets of space to make sure that the moves aren't breaking down, that Brighton are retaining possession, that, holding the ball up in the centre so that a couple of other players can get back into position. He does all the very simple things extremely well. And the important thing, he's doing it week in, week out, and for 90 minutes, rather than letting his head wander in the middle of a match.
What you're describing is massive. There's so many players that do it in spells, right? So they'll turn it on for 20-minute spell. And it's an issue that I've had with Manchester United for a long time. And that's why yesterday was so impressive, because that was a full 90 minutes where United were on it. Obviously, 10-man Saints. I'm sure you're quite happy to see Saints have 9 knocked past them. But when I watch Bissouma play, I am not even I'm not just saying this because I really like the player, but every time I see him, like you just mentioned, Jeremy, he stands out, doesn't he, in that team? And that's the Brighton side with some good players. I mean, when I watch Ben White, I've seen him a bit up and down, if I'm being honest. I think he's talented, but I don't think he's ready to move to a big club. But when I see Bissouma, I think this guy's ready to play Champions League football. He looks comfortable in midfield, and you've got to remember as well that he hasn't got, Paul Pogba around him, Bruno Fernandes around him. There's some really good players at Brighton, but they're not of that caliber. No offense. I hope you don't take that offensively. But is there a worry though that at the moment he's a big fish in a small pond, isn't he? Really, he is one of the main guys. Is there a worry if he goes to a bigger club and he perhaps gets lost in the sort of there's other good players there, and he's not necessarily guaranteed to start. Is there a little bit of a worry though that he might struggle with that? It might take time for him to adjust.
I'm never sure when people, when usually strikers, they say, oh, he scores a lot of goals for the small club that he's playing for, but can he take the step up? I often think, well, the fact that he's playing for a small club means that he's getting arguably less service. He's having to play against those bigger clubs, and he's still playing well in those matches. So I guess, certainly, for example, in the European stage, that's new to him, although he is a full international, Malian international. I suppose when it comes to playing Europa League or Champions League, that might take an adjustment because that's another level. But in terms of Premier League, obviously, apart from the United Brighton switch, if it is United that he goes to, he's playing against exactly the same clubs that he'll be playing against week in, week out. So there's no reason why he can't perform just as well for United. As you said, with better players around him, in a way, it should be easier for him. There will be more competition, I guess, for places in the centre of midfield at United. But as you said, he's got all the attributes to break into the first team and to hold a place down there. He might have to work hard to get that place in the first place, but he's overcome challenges at Lille. He's overcome challenges even at Brighton, where he wasn't an automatic first choice for the first year, even the first 18 months. But yeah, now he's made that place his own, and arguably, I was going to say he's the first name on the team sheet. I wouldn't say that because there's 4 or 5 now that can probably claim that. But certainly, as long as he's fit and Potter isn't looking to rotate, he's probably the most important part of that midfield. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with that. What have you heard in terms of possible departure? Have you heard anything, that he is likely to go this summer? Have you heard any specific club? I know that it seems to be Liverpool and United. To be honest with you, I think he's going to go to Liverpool, sadly. I know we spoke about this. We're both not fans of Liverpool. But I see if Wijnaldum does go, he's the perfect replacement. I mean, is he suited to playing in that sort of team of Liverpool, the high press, the Gengen pressing? Or would he be more suited to Manchester United, where it's more of it's a mid to low block, I'd say. We're not a high pressing team. But what we expect, let's say he plays in midfield too, it'll be a 4-2-3 on. What we expect is work extremely hard in that midfield. You saw Fred and McTominay last night. They both work extremely hard, have the ability to progress the ball forward, carry the ball, play forward passes, Bruno Fernandes and the wingers, and to be disciplined in the opposition.
Just to mention them, and the other Premier League team that comes up a lot is Arsenal as well. So, I mean, they could be candidates too. Actually, I've probably heard them mentioned more than any others.
Recently, especially, weren't they, Arsenal?
Yeah. And then the Liverpool one, I think it is, again, the sort of putting 2 and 2 and kind of the opposite of Caicedo. And, everyone's saying, well, if Wijnaldum's leaving, then Bissouma's the natural replacement. I think, the way that Potter plays, sometimes it's sort of 90% sterile possession, but also we're probably more effective when we're breaking quickly, and Bissouma is central to that in terms of sort of spraying the ball wide to hopefully Lamptey when he's fit, and March on the other side and bringing the overlapping fullbacks into play. So I think he can adapt to different kinds of formation. And yeah, I mean, for me, he could slot into either Liverpool or the United team very easily. I suppose it just depends on what role the coaches are looking to him to sort of to fill, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you mentioned Lamptey, he's a fantastic player, signed a new contract. You're delighted about that, aren't you? He's someone I think who's done the right thing. Maybe a couple more years at Brighton, but he can go very, very far. Every time I've watched him, I mean, is he injury prone though? Because he's been injured quite a lot this season. Well, I've noticed it because he was in my fantasy team quite a lot, so maybe that's how I'm judging him. But every time I've watched him, Jeremy, very good on the front foot. Manchester United, I'm just using Manchester United because that's who I support, and I watch them week in, week out. But they need a fullback to compete with Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka's decent defensively. He's getting better going forward. But Lamptey has that in his locker, doesn't he? To go forward, go past the man, put a cross in. He can score goals as well. And he's still so young. I mean, England have got a lot of good right backs, but when I've seen Lamptey play, I see a nice balance between defense and attack. Although he does play at wing back, so that's maybe the jury's still out defensively. You can answer that.
I think he is solid defensively. I think it's just because he's so tiny and looks like he could easily be knocked over. I think maybe it's sort of a little bit deceptive. I think he's a better defender than you'd sort of think looking at him. I mean, he's obviously not the first effective small fullback that there's been, but yeah, I think there is a good balance. I mean, you look at Veltman, who's come in while Lamptey's been out, and I think he's been excellent and arguably a more solid defender, but because he's a more out-and-out defender, so he's not doing more defending, but maybe he's not being caught as far upfield, for example. Whereas Lamptey was a crucial part of the attacking side of Brighton. I think we've really missed that, and it's taken a while to adjust because so much was going through him the first few weeks of the season. I think in terms of injury prone, there was a good article about it recently in The Athletic, basically saying because he's so quick but still young and kind of, I guess, adjusting to a body that's either still growing or, and he's just stopped growing, there's sort of not hamstring issues, but that's the bit that they need to kind of monitor and make sure it doesn't sort of become a more serious injury. So I think they're just trying to manage him as much as possible. So I'm not sure about injury proneness. I suppose there's a worry it could be a sort of Michael Owen situation where it's the same injury non-stop because of his style of play. So I think they're just trying to manage, I don't want to say his career, but in a way it is that, if they're a little sort of negligent with him now, it could affect him for years to come. So I think it's sort of, play it slow and steady with him.
Yeah, the thing is, muscle injuries are the worst. We saw Michael Owen, he was burnt out by 22, 23, wasn't he? And he got overplayed. And I think that's very sensible. Even Wayne Rooney overplayed at a young age. By the time he was 30, 28, 29, 30, he was almost like a 34, 35-year-old when you play when you're 16. So absolutely, muscle injuries are the worst. And, hopefully he comes back because I'm a really big fan of him. But let's move on to the final topic. And let's talk about Marseille. I always like it when you come on because obviously you're a French football journalist and expert. And there's always a lovely story around the corner. So, has Villas-Boas been sacked? Is he on? I saw he was suspended or disciplined, and I thought, what is going on there? So he didn't want to sign the lad from Celtic. What's his name? Is it? Yeah, that's it. So what is going over there? Last time we spoke, we did actually speak about Marseille, and there's issues obviously with the French league in terms of they need someone to buy the football TV rights, don't they? So what's going on at Marseille? Sarri said no to the role as well. Is ABB gonna go? I mean, I've never been a fan of him. I think he's a chancer for me. He got the Chelsea job on some reputation as the next Mourinho. Didn't do particularly well there. Then you look at him at Spurs, did all right at Spurs, but again, got sacked, and he went and became a racing car driver, didn't he, for 3 years or something, and now he's come back.
I think he's also been to St. Petersburg and somewhere else. I can't remember where.
Interesting character. But yeah, just give the listeners a lowdown on what's going on, and is there going to be a new manager on the way?
To be fair, to start off with the defense of him, he's, in a way, he and Marseille are a little bit sort of victims of their own success because they massively overachieved last year. I know the season finished early and possibly they'd have slipped a place or two, but they finished second, and I think that whatever happened, they would have secured a Champions League place. And the bottom line is, it's not a very good squad. It can't be strengthened because they got no money. And he did an amazing job qualifying them for the Champions League. This year, unsurprisingly, they did very badly in the Champions League, which didn't help. And possibly partly because of that, a quite small squad has been a little bit more stretched because they've had to play a bit more. And basically, although they had a reasonable start, including beating PSG in Paris, it's all gone downhill very quickly. So they've won 1 in their last 9 matches. Villas-Boas, practically every press conference, he's come up with, I mean, first of all, in Champions League, he was coming up with stuff like, we're shit in the Champions League. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this pod, but
it's fine, go for it.
We're shit in the Champions League, but at least we qualified in order to be shit in the Champions League, kind of thing. And then every sort of pre-Ligue 1 match press conference, he's been coming up with some kind of cryptic comments about how he's not happy. He was actually supposed to leave in the summer because he said his future was completely tied to that of Zubizarreta, who was the sporting director. Zubizarreta left, but then the players persuaded Villas-Boas to stay. It seems like the relationship between him and certain players has soured. Certainly Payet, there's no relationship between them at all since he dropped him. Payet came on in a match against Montpellier, turned the game and very publicly sort of ran past Villas-Boas, kind of going, "Are you mad, dropping me?" sort of thing. But you look at Payet, who looks, with his hair and his weight, he looks more like a sumo wrestler than a footballer at the moment. And Villas-Boas is quite right to drop him. The 2 main stars of Marseille are probably Payet and Thauvin. They apparently hate each other, in open warfare, kind of slagging each other off in front of the other players in the changing room. Then it sort of came to a head. I'm probably missing a couple of big incidents somewhere as well. I mean, there's also Error, who's the sporting director, who everyone seems to hate, quite rightly, because he seems completely useless. And anything they did well last year, I think, was despite him, not thanks to him. Then last Saturday, it came to a bit of a head when some fans went to the commandery, the Marseille training ground, which is quite a common thing in France and sort of, I think
happened in Portugal, didn't it? With Sporting Lisbon, and
I think it happens quite a lot that sort of delegations of fans groups come to meet players or directors or whatever. When
are these ultras, Jeremy?
Yeah, but I think ultras is sometimes sort of quite a. I don't think ultras always deserves negative connotations. I think it can sometimes just mean sort of well-organized fan groups that represent their interests. But obviously there's some that go too far. So a group of them, a big group of them went to the training ground on Saturday, but a smaller group from within that group basically broke into the training ground, vandalized everything, chucked Villas' belongings everywhere, threw a chair or something that hit Alvaro Gonzalez, who himself has been in the news today because he was caught not wearing a mask and told a policeman he was a son of a whore, just to keep.
I saw you share that today.
Gonzalez obviously is also the one who's got some kind of running battle with Neymar from the first PSG match. There's always something. So yeah, it's basically a complete mess. Then, as you said, Monday, deadline day, Marseille brought in Ncham on loan with an option to buy. Tuesday, Villas-Boas comes in. Everyone's saying beforehand, with a bit of a break from the norm, it's just going to be Villas-Boas doing the press conference, no player with him. I don't know if they knew what was coming, but he effectively said, Ncham is not my player. I was asked if I wanted him. I said I didn't want him. They brought him in anyway, so I quit. Or I've presented my resignation. I'm waiting to hear from the directors if they're accepting it. Directors retort by saying, you couldn't do that, so we're suspending you pending a sacking, basically. There's different ways of looking at it. Villas-Boas has basically clearly been angling to leave for a while, and is probably, despite what he said yesterday, it's not about the money. I'm sure it is about the money, and he's trying to, he doesn't want to sort of walk out without anything. I feel very sorry for Ncham, who, whether Villas-Boas wanted him or not, I think now looks like a bit of a victim. There's Arkadiusz Milik, who's just arrived from Napoli. All right, Napoli isn't the sanest place in the world, but his first experience is hiding in his bedroom to make sure he's not attacked by fans. As someone pointed out yesterday, Villas-Boas has been making it clear that he's not going to be there next summer anyway. Last week, he said Marseille need to be rebuilding from scratch. So some might say, well, why should he be consulted about players coming in, seeing as he's barely going to be coaching them going forward anyway? The whole thing's a mess. And I think I was going to say there's good and bad on both sides. I don't think there is. I think everyone is at fault. But I mean,
that's just, I didn't even realize all those little bits. I saw the training ground incident. Obviously, I saw the comments about Ncham, but I didn't realize about Payet. I mean, look, Payet, you remember in the Premier League, he was absolutely breathtaking. He was sensational, but we all knew he was a bit of a knob, didn't we? We all knew that. The way he wanted to leave West Ham, and we all just knew that. And while gifted, he must have been absolute rotten apple in a dressing room.
This goes back to when he left Nantes for Saint-Etienne, when he left Saint-Etienne for Lille. Yeah.
He's just a bad egg, isn't he? That's terrible. I mean, look, who are they going to be considering? Sarri said no. I think Sarri's he's a good manager. Sarri's quirky in himself. I actually think he'd be quite a good fit there, but he's not going to take it because, I mean, why would I think Sarri's a good manager. Why would just below top tier manager take the job when there's no money and all these issues you have to deal with? But what are the names in the hat for the job?
Lucien Favre has come up a couple of times, but I think he's already said no. The name that's come up a lot today is Sampaoli, who, I mean, he's got obviously a decent enough record, for example, with Chile, did okay with Argentina. But I, to be honest, I don't know too much about him, but certainly just looking at his sort of demeanor on the side of the pitch.
Bielsa reincarnated. I'm telling you right now.
Sorry?
He's like Bielsa reincarnated. He's one of the disciples of Bielsa. Similar style of play. He's absolutely, he's mad on the touchline. Yeah. I mean, I think the fans will buy into it. But
that's the thing. I mean, the fans still adore Bielsa. Again, it's one of these things that's mystifying to me. He landed them in he walked out on them one match into a season, and yet they still adore him. But in that sense, I think that he'd be like, the fact that he seems crazy. Balotelli went to Marseille and it started well and ended badly. In a way, Sao Paulo is the same kind of thing. It will go from one extreme to the other probably very quickly. So, I mean, that could be an interesting one. But the fact is, I mean, Marseille are, a club with an amazing pedigree, but there's something about the club, the city, everything. It's good. It's fun, but it's completely dysfunctional. And so I'm not sure that it's that attractive a place to go to at the moment, especially, like I said, there's no money and the squad needs a huge clear out.
Yeah, it's not a job I think if I was a manager I'd be attracted to. I would agree with your point on the pedigree of Marseille. I mean, it's while they haven't had a lot of success over the last 20 years or so. I mean, they've hardly. When was the last time they won Champions League? 93, was it?
It's the only time they've won Champions League. Yeah, 93. They won the league in 2010, I think.
Yeah, and that's not good enough for a club like Marseille. It's one of the it's one of the most famous French clubs, and yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. I mean, we'll probably wrap up here now, Jeremy. But on Bissouma, last words. I'm going to ask you to give your prediction. I know you kind of avoided it, but do you think he's going to leave at the end of the season?
I do think he's going to leave, yeah. I think this is sort of the unknown for Brighton because, certainly the squad that Houghton brought up and that sort of kept Brighton up for the first couple of years, I mean, pretty much there's only Dunk and March left. But that was generally a bit of an older squad, and so those players have gradually left, and it was sort of their time to leave. There's not too many surprises there. But I think actually talking about French football, it's almost like a French club style that Potter is making the squad a lot younger, and they're investing in players, spending a little bit of money in the expectation that they will make big profits on them. And Bissouma, actually, none of those players have gone yet. None of those ones that they're looking to make a big profit on. So he's the first one. So it's going to be an interesting test case kind of to see if you know, Tony Bloom is kind of in a sort of Lille style, able to eke out, you know, every last million, which I expect he will do, you know, being the top poker player he is. But I mean, yeah, I think no smoke without fire. And although Bissouma hasn't come out and said he wants to leave or anything like that, I'm sure that he's ready to, and that Brighton are clearly preparing for his replacement.
I just hope it's not Arsenal, because I think that he can do better than that. I know Arsenal are in some decent form. They got absolutely one terrible defeat for them yesterday. But I just think that if he waits a little bit, I hate Liverpool, but if Liverpool are interested, then he'd be crazy to go somewhere like Arsenal and maybe even wait it out a little bit. But Jeremy, thank you very, very much for joining me. Where can all the listeners find your fantastic work?
So mainly on Twitter at JeremySmith98, on French Football Weekly, Get French Football News, and then a little bit of everywhere.
Brilliant. What we'll do is we'll put a link down with your profile, and we'll put the Get French Football News down at the bottom as well. Always a pleasure, Jeremy. You're one of my favorite guests. Thank you for coming on. We'll get you on again very soon. I'm sure there'll be another French player or another meltdown in Ligue 1 that we will talk about. So thank you very much. And to all the listeners, make sure you check out some of Jeremy's fantastic work. Make sure you check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. We're doing audio. If you don't want to see our faces all the time, then you can listen to that. Make sure you give us a 5-star if you enjoy the content. That helps us push out our podcast to more people. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.